The Tao of Physics by Capra. The author explains that science and mysticism are not dichotomies but are in sync. Science does not need mysticism and mysticism does not need science, but man needs both. Physics is a science expressed through the highly precise and rational language of mathematics, while Eastern mysticism, encompassing the religious philosophies of Hinduism, Buddhism, and Taoism, is a spiritual discipline based primarily on meditation. The main message of the book concerns the parallels between modern physics and Eastern mysticism. Why and how these two things have something in common. The first simple answer is that both science and religion are looking for the same thing, the truth. What sort of paradoxes are found in both quantum physics and Eastern religion? How particles and waves can be seen as a parallel to yin and yang, and why there is no space without time and no time without space. For Eastern mystics, deep spiritual experiences shape the way the universe is perceived. Classical physics was formulated by Isaac Newton. The field was based on the idea of absolute space and time, the existence of elementary solid particles, the notion that you can determine the behavior of physical objects and that nature can be described objectively, regardless of the observer's perspective. Modern physics, however, takes a dramatically different track, essentially demolishing the classical theory. According to the Einstein's 1905 theory of relativity, time and space are relative. That means we can't speak about one without speaking about the other. Or take his formula E is equal to mc square, in which E is energy, m is mass, and c is the constant speed of light. This groundbreaking discovery established that mass is a mere form of energy. Quantum theory holds that the movement of some atomic particles can't be determined with certainty, but rather show tendencies to occur. Quantum theory also put forward the revolutionary idea that objective descriptions of nature are naturally impossible, since atomic particles are affected by the very act of observing them. With such discoveries in mind, modern physics had to contend with a number of paradoxes. Spirituality is usually understood as a way of being that flows from a certain profound experience of reality, which is known as mystical, religious, or spiritual experience. There are numerous descriptions of this experience in the literature of world's religion, which tend to agree that it is a direct, non-intellectual experience of reality with some fundamental characteristics that are independent of cultural and historical context. Our spiritual moments are moments when we feel intensively alive. The aliveness felt during such peak experiences involves not only the body but also the mind. Buddhists refer to this mental alertness as mindfulness, and they emphasize, interestingly, that mindfulness is deeply rooted in the body. There, the eye goes not, speech goes not, nor the mind. We know not, we understand not. How one would teach it? They encounter with mystery, so the mystics tell us, is often accompanied by a deep sense of awe and wonder together with a feeling of great humility. There are three main concepts from the book. The more theories of modern physics have been defined, the more they seem to agree everything is connected. From planets to subatomic particles Each entity in physics is ever changing and ever moving. Asian mystics have long believed in the ideas of unity, as now do modern physics. The mystic and the physicist arrive at the same conclusion, one starting from the inner realm, the other from the outer world. In the end, the aggressors always destroy themselves, making way for others who know how to cooperate and get along. Life is much less a competitive struggle for survival than a triumph of cooperation and creativity. Understanding of life begins with the understanding of patterns. The more we study the major problems of our time, the more we come to realize that they cannot be understood in isolation. They are systematic problems, which means that they are interconnected and interdependent. Whenever we look at life, we look at networks. Whenever the essential nature of things is analyzed by the intellect, it must seem absurd or paradoxical. This has always been recognized by the mystic, but has become a problem in science only very recently. Our Western science, ever since the 17th century, has been obsessed with the notion of control, of man dominating nature. This obsession has led to disaster. The elements of life are dynamic patterns of mass and energy, events rather than objects. When you think of mysticism, what comes to mind? Do you think about auras and healing chakras, weird chants, and yoga poses? If these are the things that come to your mind, it's understandable that you might view mysticism and modern science as being completely separate entities. Deep ecology does not see the world as a collection of isolated objects, but rather as a network of phenomena that are fundamentally interconnected and interdependent. In physics, we see this when we reach the subatomic dimension. Eastern mystics see the same thing. They overcome our ordinary conceptions through altered state of consciousness. Traditional Western medicine treats the body as a machine made up of separate parts. When something goes wrong, there is physical intervention through surgery or chemical intervention through medicine, he says. With the acceptance of Eastern philosophies into modern science, he says, the body would be seen as a whole, as a dynamic whole, that when it becomes ill is really out of balance with itself. This is yin and yang in Chinese philosophy, something for centuries. Movement and change are consistent behaviors of the universe and all matter that's in it. In 1929, the astronomer Edwin Hubble discovered that the universe was born around 10 billion ago from a big explosion called a Big Bang. Since then, it had kept on slowly expanding. Proton, neutron, electrons, all of these only exist in dynamic structure. Eastern wisdom has known reality is oneness and dynamism for millennia. Hinduism, Buddhism, and Taoism are among the most ancient religions. They were born in India and China between 2000 and 500 BC. One of the key concepts of Hinduism is Brahman, the inner essence of all things. What's more, it sees the world as an ever-changing reality, where things and their mutual connections evolve continuously. The highest spiritual state one can achieve in Hinduism is liberation. It happens when you are able to feel this unity and constant movement. However, liberation is not something you can achieve using rationality. You can only develop your perception through the practice of yoga and meditation. Buddhists also believe in the oneness of everything as the way to enlightenment. This is because most of our negative feelings come from seeing ourselves as separate from the rest of the world. Here too, perceiving that everything is transitory is important to free ourselves from this suffering. Buddhists think almost nothing in life is worth worrying about. since all things arise and pass away. The author, while he was sitting by the ocean one afternoon and felt the cascading waves and sand forming a cosmic dance, which he intuitively liked to the dance of Shiva that he had been reading about. The author explains that everyday perceptions of reality aren't true. This ordinary perception works very well at the macroscopic or visible level. We can understand things as separate physical entities, as a table, a chair, a person, whatever. Eastern mystics, however, would say that our conceptual separations are illusion. It is the same in modern physics. At the microscopic level, the level of atoms and subatomic particles of which everything is made, we find that the universe is an overall indivisible process. There are no substances, no things, there are no small grains of sand or anything. There are only dynamic patterns of energy. And energy is not a thing, but a measure of activity. Quantum theory forces us to see the universe not as a collection of physical objects, but rather as a complicated wealth of relations between various parts of a unified whole.